Rejection can't physically hurt you, so why does it feel like it does? Imagine this. You spend 20 minutes writing a text message. You read it once, then twice, then 10 more times. You finally send it. And suddenly, your heart starts racing. What if they don't reply? What if they leave you on read? What if they think you're weird? What if they reject you? What's strange is that nothing dangerous is happening. No one is chasing you. No one is attacking you. Yet your brain reacts as if your survival is at stake. And in a way, it is. Humans fear many things. We fear heights. We fear failure. We fear uncertainty. But for most people, few fears are as powerful as the fear of rejection. A fear that can stop us from expressing our feelings, applying for opportunities, making new friends, starting businesses, or becoming who we truly want to be. But why? Why does hearing a simple no feel so painful? Why can rejection from a stranger ruin our entire day? And why do some people spend their entire lives trying to avoid it? Today, we're going to explore the hidden psychology behind rejection. We'll discover why it hurts so much, why your brain treats it like physical pain, and how fear of rejection quietly controls more of your life than you probably realize. To understand rejection, we need to travel back thousands of years. Long before smartphones, long before cities, long before modern society existed. Imagine living in a small tribe, maybe 50 people, maybe 100. Every day depended on the group. The group hunted together, protected each other, shared food, raised children. If you belonged to the tribe, you survived. If you were cast out, you often died. Alone in the wilderness, survival became nearly impossible. This created something powerful in the human brain, a deep need for belonging, not a preference, a need. Your ancestors who cared about social acceptance survived. Those who didn't were less likely to pass on their genes. Over thousands of generations, our brains evolved to treat social exclusion as a serious threat. Today, being ignored on social media won't kill you. Getting rejected by a crush won't leave you in the wilderness. But your brain still carries ancient survival software. Part of your mind reacts to social rejection as if you're being expelled from the tribe. That's why rejection feels so much bigger than it logically should. You're not just hearing no. Your brain interprets it as you don't belong. And for millions of years, not belonging was dangerous. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Scientists have discovered that social rejection doesn't just feel painful metaphorically. It activates some of the same brain regions involved in physical pain. Think about that. The emotional pain of being excluded and the physical pain of getting injured partially overlap inside the brain. This might explain why people use physical language to describe emotional experiences. My heart was broken. That hurt. It felt like a punch in the stomach. These aren't just poetic expressions. The brain genuinely processes rejection as a form of pain. In one famous experiment, participants played a virtual ball tossing game. At first, everyone included them. Then suddenly, the other players stopped throwing them the ball. They were excluded. Even though participants knew the game wasn't real, many still reported feelings of distress and emotional pain. A simple act of exclusion triggered a surprisingly strong response. This reveals something important. Humans aren't designed to be indifferent to rejection. We're wired to feel it deeply. And that's exactly why it can influence so much of our behavior. So, why we fear rejection more than failure? Here's something interesting. Many people aren't actually afraid of failing. They're afraid of what failure might mean socially. Think about it. Why are people terrified of public speaking? Usually not because talking is difficult. It's because they fear embarrassment, judgment, criticism, rejection. Why do people avoid sharing creative work? Because someone might dislike it. Why do people stay silent during meetings? Because they don't want to sound stupid. At the core of many fears lies one hidden concern. What will other people think of me? In other words, fear of rejection. This fear becomes especially powerful because humans are social creatures. Our self-esteem is deeply connected to how accepted we feel. When rejection threatens our social identity, it threatens how we see ourselves. And that's what makes it so emotionally intense. Not everyone fears rejection equally. Some people recover quickly. Others carry the pain for years. Why? Part of the answer may lie in childhood. As children, we learn how relationships work. We learn whether people are reliable, whether love feels secure, whether mistakes are tolerated or punished. Imagine a child who receives affection only when they behave perfectly. Over time, they may begin to believe, I am lovable only when I perform well. Or imagine a child frequently criticized, ignored, or rejected. They may grow up expecting rejection everywhere, even in situations where none exists. As adults, these early experiences often continue operating in the background. Someone may become a people pleaser. Someone else may avoid relationships entirely. Another person may constantly seek reassurance, all because they're trying to avoid an emotional wound created years ago. The fear isn't always about the present. Sometimes it's about protecting ourselves from old pain. So, how fear of rejection controls our lives? Here's the scary part. Fear of rejection doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it disguises itself as perfectionism, as procrastination, as overthinking, as people-pleasing, as staying in your comfort zone. Think about someone who never starts a YouTube channel. Maybe they say, I'm waiting for the perfect time. But underneath that excuse might be a deeper fear. What if nobody watches? What if people judge me? What if I fail publicly? Fear of rejection often convinces us we're being rational, when really, we're protecting ourselves from discomfort. The result? Missed opportunities, unspoken feelings, unpursued dreams, a smaller life. Not because we're incapable, but because we're trying to avoid being rejected. Here's the irony. The more you fear rejection, the more power it gains. Imagine two people. The first avoids every situation where rejection might happen, never asks anyone out, never shares opinions, never takes risks, never applies for ambitious opportunities. Their rejection rate is low, but so is their growth. You know why rejection feels personal? One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming rejection is always about them. But reality is far more complicated. Someone may reject your idea because they're stressed, your application because they found another candidate, your message because they're busy, your invitation because they're tired. Yet our brains immediately jump to, there must be something wrong with me. Psychologists call this personalization, the tendency to interpret events as reflections of our worth. But rejection often says more about circumstances than about value. A no is not proof that you're unworthy. It's simply information. The problem is that emotions often convince us otherwise. So, how to become less afraid of rejection? So how do we overcome this fear? Not by eliminating rejection. That's impossible. Instead, we change our relationship with it. First, recognize that rejection is normal. Every successful person has experienced it. Actors, athletes, entrepreneurs, writers, scientists, everyone. Second, separate rejection from identity. Being rejected doesn't mean you are a rejection. One event does not define your value. Third, practice small acts of courage. Speak up. Share your ideas. Start conversations. Post the video. Send the message. Take manageable risks. Each experience teaches your brain something important. You can survive rejection. And once your brain learns that, its power begins to shrink. Finally. Remember this. Confidence doesn't come from never being rejected. Confidence comes from knowing you'll be okay even if you are. At the end of the day, the fear of rejection is really the fear of disconnection, a fear carried by our ancestors, a fear wired into our brains, a fear that once helped humans survive. But in the modern world, the same fear often holds us back. It convinces us to stay silent when we should speak, to hide when we should create, to avoid when we should try. Yet every meaningful relationship, every great opportunity, every important achievement exists on the other side of uncertainty. And yes, sometimes rejection. But rejection is not the opposite of success. It's part of the path to it. Because every no teaches something. Every setback builds resilience. And every moment of courage weakens fear's grip on your life. So the next time rejection scares you, remember this. The goal isn't to avoid rejection. The goal is to become the kind of person who isn't defined by it. Because the people who live the fullest lives aren't those who never hear no. They're the ones who keep moving forward anyway, and that changes everything. If you related to this video, you're definitely not alone. And if you enjoyed this kind of psychology and human behavior content, subscribe for more videos about emotions, habits, and the hidden psychology behind human behavior. See you in the next video.